Microsoft's Xbox released on November 15, 2001 in North America, a mere 3 days prior to the Nintendo GameCube's North American launch. Seeing Microsoft enter the fray was an interesting twist in the 6th gen, as Sega had just ended its nearly 2-decade console history to now go multi-platform. Now, there's no denying the original Xbox had some truly quality gaming experiences, and some bangers that I absolutely loved on the console. While the GameCube and PlayStation 2 were my main consoles of choice this generation, a friend of mine provided me with an Xbox years into the console's life cycle, and I was able to check out various titles for the console. In this episode, I want to dive into my personal top 10 picks of Xbox games that I wished released on the GameCube. Much like my PlayStation 2 list episode that I released last year, which I will link in the description down below, the stipulation here is that these games are ones that were published by third-party studios like Sega, Capcom, etc. None of the games published by Microsoft Game Studios, as those were clearly the console exclusives that were needed to cement the console's identity. Now, I want to clarify that, as always, these are my personal picks, and not all of these will necessarily be the best Xbox games, but rather the games I very much enjoyed and feel would have fit releasing multi-platform. But before we dive in, I want to shout out today's sponsor. Recently, the fine people over at RetroFighters have released their new Hunter controller for the original Xbox and also works for the Switch and PC. I've covered the Brawler GC and Blade GC controllers as a review on the channel, and I walked away very impressed with them. The Hunter hits all the notes that it needs to in terms of aesthetics and functionality. The controllers are built more ergonomically than the Xbox Controller S, and certainly more so than the infamous Duke that I personally could not stand back in the day. The analog sticks feel great here, as does the D-pad and all the face buttons. Additionally, the black and white buttons, while still on the face of the controller, have also been mapped to the bumpers on top of the controller, making it feel more like a modern controller or even that akin to a 360 controller. During my time capturing all the games here, this was the controller I utilized, and it was my new favorite way to experience the original Xbox. If you're interested, I will leave a link to these controllers in the description down below. Thank you again, RetroFighters, for sending this my way. Now, let's dive into this topic. And first up at number 10 is Arctic Thunder, published and developed by Midway and ported to consoles by Inland Productions. Funny enough, my PS2 list started with a snowmobile game too. Anyway, Arctic Thunder is a game I played quite a bit in the arcades and always thought it was a blast. Building upon the Thunder series of games, this over-the-top snowmobiling racer has you choosing from a cast of characters and tackling crazy tracks that you would expect to come right out of Hydro Thunder. Throughout tracks, there are power-ups you can pick up like atomic snowballs, grappling hooks, and more, while there are also health pickups and instant boost power-ups. Being a port of the arcade version, Inland Productions added various other modes of play, as well as a points mode where you can accrue points to purchase upgrades and unlockables. This can range from upgrading the rider of your choice's power-up efficacy to snowmobiles and their stats, to unlocking new tracks, riders, and more. While this does get a bit grindy to unlock everything, the game itself is just downright simple fun. It's not the most graphically intensive game by any means, and the audio is quite compressed, but overall it does what it needs to do. When I heard it was getting a home port for the PlayStation 2, I was hoping to hear it would come to the GameCube upon that console's release. Instead, Midway opted to release this 2 months later as a launch day title for the Xbox, but sadly skipped the GameCube entirely. It's a shame too, because I always loved the Thunder series of games and would have easily bought this on the GameCube despite its poor critical reception that it received. Next up on the list is Roller Coaster Tycoon, published by Infogrames and developed by Frontier. Now, as a kid growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, the original Roller Coaster Tycoon that released on PC was, simply put, awesome. While there were games like it already, like Bullfrog's theme park games, Roller Coaster Tycoon was one that was far more intricate, with a ton of customization that also evaded the pitfall of feeling overwhelming beyond belief. I grew up playing this like crazy on the PC, but it was either at a friend's house or on my brother's PC, as I didn't have my own PC at the time. When I heard years later that the Xbox was receiving a console port of the PC Classic, with numerous of the expansions included, I was already thinking, holy crap, can this game please release on the GameCube as well, since Infogrames is publishing it? Alas, that did not happen, and it remained a console exclusive on the Xbox. While it received mixed reviews, I did get around to trying this one out a few years ago, and honestly, it's not too bad. The majority of the features you'd expect made their way here, creating your dream park, setting down pathways, terrain changes, ride placement, custom coaster creations, and much more. There's the campaign mode that has you completing objectives of already created parks, which provides a nice challenge on your management skills, and running rampant with your ideas of creating your own park was always addictive here. While the game doesn't do anything visually groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination, the game is one I wish would have seen a GameCube port as well, as I would have easily got this to avoid jumping on a PC to play this one. Next up on the list is Jet Set Radio Future, published by Sega and developed by Smilebit. Coming hot off of the Dreamcast original that became an absolute cult classic, the team over at Smilebit returned with the reimagining of Tokyoto, now with a bunch more content. Bigger environments, more characters, different story, and mechanics that have all been fine-tuned, Jet Set Radio Future is essentially the ultimate version of the title. Skating around this future Tokyo, you'll be facing off against various gangs while spraying graffiti throughout the city and platforming your way to crazy heights in the process. This game is just as bizarre as its original, with its wacky fun gameplay and extremely upbeat catchy tunes. This is one that really is one of the most unique experiences for the 6th gen. The game looks so immensely vibrant, building upon the cel-shaded style, and it has aged gracefully too, all while running at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second mark. While I wish the Dreamcast original was one that came to the GameCube, this reimagined installment would have been even better to bring to the console, as the property as a whole does appear to have the aesthetic that would better fit a Nintendo audience personally, and I think the GameCube would have been able to handle this game's performance. Next up is Dino Crisis 3, published and developed by Capcom. Now, here is an interesting installment in the series that would ultimately result in it becoming extinct. Dino Crisis 3 started production in the year 2000 and was supposed to take place in a ravaged city taken over by dinosaurs, while commanding a unit to assist and choices that would affect the overall story. However, due to the attacks during 9/11, Capcom decided to ultimately change the setting and story entirely to dinosaurs on a spaceship. And not just any spaceship, but an ever-changing spaceship. It's unique for sure, and a big departure from the far more interesting original concept. That being said, this is a game I played back in the day, and while I knew this was trashed critically, I still wanted to check it out for myself since I love the original 2 on PS1, as well as the spin-off Dino Stalker on the PS2. So I will say, this game does warrant its criticisms, specifically with its atrocious camera that's honestly the worst I've experienced in gaming. Yes, far worse than Batman Dark Tomorrow's, honestly. The gameplay itself is fast-paced, as you are equipped with the Wasp, a versatile jetpack that makes maneuvering a breeze. You'll be able to easily jump and dash your way through combat while gunning down space dinos. I mentioned about the ever-changing ship aspect, and that's because the spaceship is essentially one big puzzle that you'll be altering and navigating through. The gameplay itself isn't terrible, but if the camera was drastically improved, then what's here really isn't half bad. Definitely the weakest installment in the franchise, no question, but still an admirable direction, all things considered. I did wish this got released on the GameCube, as I do think it would have been possible to pull off the visuals on there as well, although I am glad that GameCube owners were provided Resident Evil over Dino Crisis franchise-wise. Alright, coming in at number 6 is Enclave, published by Conspiracy Entertainment and developed by Starbreeze Studios. Now, this is a game that I feel was a hidden gem for the original Xbox. I first came across this as a PC demo disc I got from EB Games back in the day that was given out to any customers. I installed it on one of the PCs that I received years later back in the day, not knowing what to expect, and left it wanting more. This hack and slash action adventure game has you either defending the land of Sellenheim or conquering it as you choose between either light or dark campaigns. Both campaigns provide different missions and unique experiences overall. You get to choose from a variety of characters based on their class, and each get their own loadout, whether it be melee weapons, ranged weapons, armors, items, etc. While the story wasn't anything to write home about, it was the overall gameplay that caught my attention. Something about the game had me coming back for more, and is just a fun yet challenging game. Once I beat the demo several times, I came to learn that it was getting a GameCube and Xbox console version, and I was stoked. And then, they decided to cancel the GameCube version, which bummed me out quite a bit back then. The worst part to me was the fact that it ended up getting a Wii port exclusively to Europe years later. Thankfully, I got to finally play this many years later, at first on the Xbox, and then I actually completed the campaign in the HD version that released on the Switch last summer that's also available on the PS4, PS5, and Xbox consoles. Seriously though, this is a pretty good game that never gets enough recognition and is easily worth playing. And in the number 5 spot is ToeJam and Earl 3 Mission to Earth, published by Sega and developed by ToeJam and Earl Productions alongside Visual Concepts. So I grew up with a Sega Genesis in my household as opposed to a Super Nintendo. Shocking statement, I know. But the Genesis was awesome nonetheless. That being said, I remember renting both ToeJam and Earl 1 and 2 from Blockbuster back in the day, and man, they were some pretty weird, quirky games. You play as these funky aliens that need to save the sacred albums of funk that are scattered throughout the earth and stop anti-funk from killing off funk music altogether. Pretty funky, huh? The story is as absurd as the game's style, and I expect nothing less coming from the Genesis originals. The game is a 3D platformer in which you tackle objectives across various levels that take place along Earth's ecosystem. You can convert humans to be into that funk vibe using funk fu, finding presents to give to others, acquire abilities to assist in traversing areas, and more. I have to say, the game oozes personality. There are tons of innuendos that'll have you chuckling, and the voice acting amongst the characters just nails the overall humor.
You're the one who got me out here, and now you're gonna make us late. ToeJam, what the hell are you doing?
Nothing. Just filming some flowers.
You better be filming flowers.
The game itself is also pretty chill and relaxing to play, honestly, with the music further lending to the vibe of this game. It honestly feels like the best way to bring the series to the 3D space after two very different installments on the Genesis, but this one does feel closer to the original game that released. Interestingly, the game was in production for the N64 originally, then the Dreamcast, and even the series' creators were trying to then bring it preferably to either the PS2 or GameCube, but when Visual Concepts stepped in to assist on development, they opted to just get the Xbox version going for it at the time. I remember seeing this in GamePro and thinking, dang, this would have been awesome to release in the GameCube, especially being a fan of it on the Genesis. Sadly, this one never got remastered or re-released in any way later on either. If you're a fan of the originals on the Genesis or are looking for something unique that's actually a co-op experience, honestly, this is something to definitely pick up on your Xbox while you still can.
Those are some pretty big pom-poms. Hey, Miss Cheerleader. Alright, I needed some. Girl, you got it going on. Hey, Earthling, stay funky, you know?
Hello?
Yo, be cool, alright?
You look like a big orange
Right
teddy
on.
bear.
A present for Big Earl.
And in the number 4 spot is Genma Onimusha, published and developed by Capcom. Coming off hot from the PS2 launch before the GameCube and Xbox were even released, this very well received title was opted to be brought over to the Xbox a year later with refined mechanics, arranged item placement, new enemies, new locations, and an all-new Ogre Tower to tackle. Essentially, Onimusha is Resident Evil if it took place in the feudal Japan era, in which you play as a samurai named Samanosuke, in which he must stop Nobunaga and his demon warriors. It plays with tank controls and fixed camera angles, but works incredibly well in offering this action horror hybrid game. Now, I played the original on the PS2 numerous times, and seeing that the Xbox version was receiving an enhanced port, not going to lie, that one stung a bit. Anyway, while many critics stated that there weren't a ton of differences between the two, this one sounded like the definitive version to experience. The added Ogre Tower, which is much like the Dark Realm Endurance locations, actually rewards you with acquiring a new armor set that makes you take less damage, and the difficulty has been increased quite a bit overall with the new enemies added and amount on screen. Add in the fact that there are now green souls you can acquire to enhance your attack, but the enemies can try to siphon that towards them so that they can grow stronger. It really changes the dynamic and approach of the battles. Also, this Stalker doll is completely new and chases you throughout the game, almost like a creepy Mr. X or Nemesis. And when you're not exploring and facing demons, you'll be solving puzzles, and the water puzzle, all these years later, still provides me with a level of anxiety that is absolutely through the roof and is honestly nightmare fuel. The GameCube missed out on this series, as mentioned in my PS2 games I wish released on the GameCube episode, and it's a shame because the GBA got an exclusive Onimusha game that was a tactics title, and definitely not quite my forte. Still, the PS4, X1, and Switch remaster of Onimusha 1 is based on the PS2 version, and it doesn't contain any of the content that was exclusive here. So if you want to experience what is essentially the definitive version of Onimusha 1, Genma Onimusha for the Xbox sounds like the place to check it out. Kicking off the top 3 spot is Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, published by Sega and developed by AM2 and Sumo Digital. Outrun is a game that doesn't quite need much introduction, but after 15 years, the team over at AM2 and Sumo Digital crafted what is arguably one of, if not the greatest arcade racer of all time. Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast was an enhanced version of Outrun 2 that released prior as an Xbox exclusive, in which you race from a nice selection of Ferraris along varied locales like beaches, mountains, and cities, all of which are connected seamlessly. You will be racing against the clock as well as other racers at times as you try to reach the end of 5 courses, and at the end of each course, you could choose between one of 2 paths, resulting in a different area to drive through. Depending on the path you choose also determines the difficulty of the upcoming area, and mixing and matching these selections between each course provides for various locales to drive along. Depending on the game mode you choose, you'll be given objectives to tackle as well, such as trying not to collide with other vehicles, to hitting ghosts, to drifting as much as possible, and many more. Doing so nets hearts, which will apply to a letter rank you will receive. After all, you're racing a Ferrari with a pretty girl in the car. Gotta impress her with those gaming or driving skills, I mean. Visually, the game looks absolutely stunning, with superb art direction and a rock-solid 60 frames a second. This was always a game I wish Sega brought to the GameCube. It honestly baffled me seeing this enhanced port get released to the PS2 and PSP, yet it couldn't get a GameCube port too while they were at it. The controller alone would have felt right at home here. It's such a bummer, but hey, if you have an Xbox, or even a PS2 or PSP, getting Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast is an absolute essential. And in the number 2 spot is Dead or Alive 3, published by Tecmo and developed by Team Ninja. Dead or Alive 3 was the first time I'd experienced the franchise, and holy crap did this game blow my mind. The fighting system was fast and fluid, with awesome stage designs that allowed you to knock your opponents into a different area and continue your fight. However, it is in its 3-point rock, paper, scissors countering system that truly makes DOA stand out mechanically. Knowing when to counter high, mid, and low attacks at the right time could change the outcome of a fight, and master it enough, and you could technically win a fight solely countering. The cast of characters here are awesome as well, from Hayate, Jen Lee, Kasumi, Ayane, as well as newcomers Hitomi and Brad Wong, and of course, my favorite character, Hayabusa from Ninja Gaiden. And that's the thing too, I had never played DOA before trying this at a friend's house back in the day and was like, wait a minute, is that Ryu Hayabusa from the original Ninja Gaiden games? Dead or Alive 3 truly is a spectacular fighting game that I wished would have made its way to the GameCube in some capacity, and it was not until the 3DS launched in 2011 that the franchise would hit a Nintendo platform with Dead or Alive Dimensions, which was the sole reason I got a 3DS at launch in preparation for that game. Seriously though, Dead or Alive 3 was reason enough for me to invest in an Xbox back in the day. Granted, I got it for free, but that is a testament to just how amazing the game was and still is. Oh, and let's not forget about those physics, which are on another level, and it is awesome. So awesome, in fact, that they made a volleyball game based on those physics. And if you know, you know. If you've never played any of the DOA games, DOA 3 is a fantastic entry point, and still one that I'd say belongs in any Xbox owner's library.
行くぞハヤブサ来い
Get ready, fight!
Alright guys, let's do a quick recap. So at number 10, we have Arctic Thunder. At number 9, Roller Coaster Tycoon. At number 8, Jet Set Radio Future. At number 7, Dino Crisis 3. And at number 6, Enclave. And at number 5, ToeJam and Earl 3, Mission to Earth. At number 4, Genma Onimusha. At number 3, Outrun 2006, Coast to Coast. And at number 2, Dead or Alive 3. And for the number 1 top spot,
and now, the dragon sword is gripped firmly in the hands of young ninja Ryu Hayabusa.
And of course, at number 1 is Ninja Gaiden, published by Tecmo and developed by Team Ninja. Ninja Gaiden was a reboot of sorts where we step back into the shoes of the dragon ninja Ryu Hayabusa. His village is attacked and pillaged by the fiend Doku, and suffering a near-death experience, he is hell-bent on stopping the fiend from acquiring the Dark Dragon Blade. Where the NES trilogy revolutionized gaming by introducing players to cinematics, the Xbox installment takes the action to new heights that we hadn't seen anything like it yet in gaming. It has an ultra-fluid combat system that has a level of complexity to it and is immensely gratifying to see in action. Every enemy can easily do serious damage to Hayabusa if he's not careful, and defense is the name of the game. Blocking is absolutely essential to deflecting enemy attacks, and knowing when to attack back is key. If you master the animation frame timing, you can also pull off various parries on enemies. Additionally, you'll learn new abilities throughout exploration, like the Hurricane Throw and iconic Izuna Drop, which never gets old to pull off. If that wasn't enough, Hayabusa will acquire new weapons, each with their own unique combos and uses. While the story here isn't quite as strongly told as the NES originals, what's here still connects the game just fine. Also, look at how stunning the game looks. Team Ninja were no slouch when it came to their visuals and art direction. Ninja Gaiden was legitimately the #1 reason I wanted an Xbox, especially being a die-hard fan of the originals. The moment I saw it was announced and shown in a magazine, I remember shouting to my brother in the car that there was a new Ninja Gaiden game, but it was exclusive to the Xbox, and we flipped out because we didn't have an Xbox. I remember thinking, wait a minute, this franchise was successful due to the NES, so shouldn't it be on a Nintendo platform as well? I should state that Ninja Gaiden Black was actually the game I got instead, since it was more content rich. If you never played the Ninja Gaiden games, I cannot stress enough that this is an absolute must-play title. Better yet, you can get the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection on the Switch, PS4, PS5, and Xbox consoles, which actually contains what I consider the superior version of this installment, Ninja Gaiden Sigma. The game still retains its old school difficulty, but it makes you feel like an absolute badass. I still to this day wish that we had a GameCube version. But hey, at least Nintendo did get their own exclusive version for the DS, Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, which, by the way, one of the best DS games out there. The OG Xbox may have been the new kid on the block, but there's no denying it cemented some awesome games to signify the platform, furthermore with its strong third-party support. Much like I've stated before, a console's exclusives are essential to make the platform stand out and give reason to explore that console. While these are all games I wish had a GameCube port, I'm glad that there were reasons for me to dive into this console back in the day and enjoy them. So, did you play any of these? Any that you wish you saw a GameCube port of? Sound off in the comments below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, also be sure to check out my other videos covering PS2 games and Dreamcast games that I wish received GameCube ports. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next episode.